The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage, the metallic echo bouncing off oil-stained walls like a gunshot in the night. I'd been under the hood of Mrs. Patterson's '98 Honda Civic for the better part of 3 hours, trying to coax life back into her dying alternator, when Claire's voice drifted through the thin walls separating my auto shop from our house. "We're sleeping together, but it doesn't really count since we're using protection." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I froze, my calloused hands still gripping the edge of the engine block, motor oil dripping steadily onto my steel-toed boots. 22 years of marriage, and this is how I find out my wife's been stepping out on me? Through the cracked window above my workbench, I could see Claire pacing in our kitchen, her silhouette backlit by the warm glow of the pendant lights I'd installed last Christmas. She was gesturing animatedly, that expensive smartphone pressed against her ear like it was some kind of lifeline. Her photographer's portfolio case sat open on the counter, expensive camera equipment scattered around like the remnants of our life together. "No, Ethan, he doesn't suspect anything," she continued, her voice carrying that breathless quality I hadn't heard in years. "Oliver's always buried in that garage. Sometimes I think he loves those broken-down cars more than he loves me." Ethan. The name rolled around in my head like a marble in an empty can. Ethan Carter, her old college friend who'd been showing up in her stories with increasing frequency over the past 6 months. The smooth-talking advertising executive with his expensive suits and fancy downtown office. The guy who'd been hiring Claire for more and more photography projects lately. I wiped my hands on the red shop rag hanging from my belt and stepped closer to the window. Claire had stopped pacing and was leaning against our kitchen island, the one we'd picked out together at Home Depot 3 years ago when we still talked about renovating the house. Maybe starting over. "Protection makes it safe," she said with a laugh that sounded nothing like the woman I'd married. "Besides, it's not like Oliver and I have been intimate in months. He's always too tired, too dirty, too something." The bitter taste of betrayal filled my mouth like I'd been chewing on pennies. I thought about all those late nights she'd claimed to be working, all those weekend client meetings that seemed to stretch longer and longer. The new lingerie I'd glimpsed in her dresser drawer, tags still attached, that never made an appearance in our bedroom. My phone buzzed in my back pocket, startling me back to the present. A text from my boxing coach, Willie Braddock. "You coming to the gym tonight, champ? Haven't seen you in a week." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Willie had been trying to get me back into competitive boxing for years. Said I still had the reflexes and the anger to make something happen in the ring. At 40, I was probably too old to make a real comeback. But right now, the idea of hitting something until my knuckles bled sounded pretty appealing. Instead of responding to Willie, I opened my camera app and started recording. If Claire wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had all the rules. "The thing is," Claire was saying, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper she used when she was sharing secrets. "Oliver's so predictable. Every morning, he's in that garage by 7. Every evening, he's there until 9 or 10. Weekends, same thing. It's like being married to a robot." She paused, listening to whatever Ethan was saying on the other end. Then she laughed again, that foreign sound that made my stomach clench. "Tomorrow night? The Riverside Motel again? God, that place is such a dump. But I suppose it's fitting. Secret affairs should happen in secret places, right?" I stopped recording and slipped the phone back into my pocket. The Riverside Motel was about 15 minutes from here, a rundown place on the edge of town that rented rooms by the hour to truckers and people who didn't want to be seen. I'd driven past it 1,000 times, never imagining my wife would be conducting business there. Claire ended her call, and I watched her gather up her camera equipment, moving with the efficient grace of someone who'd been living a double life. She glanced toward the garage, and for a moment, I thought she might come out to say goodnight like she used to. Instead, she turned off the kitchen lights and headed upstairs. I stood there in the darkness of my garage, surrounded by the familiar smells of motor oil and metal shavings, and felt something cold and calculating settle into my chest where my heart used to be. Claire thought I was predictable. She thought I was just some dumb mechanic who'd never figure out what she was up to. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. The next morning, I did exactly what Claire expected me to do. I was in the garage by 7, coffee in hand, ready to tackle the day's work. But instead of diving straight into Mrs. Patterson's Honda, I spent the first hour making phone calls. Oliver James Auto Repair, this is Oliver. Hey, Oliver, it's Detective Sheila Torres. How's business? Sheila and I had gone to high school together, back when she was just Sheila Martinez, and I was the kid with grease under his fingernails even then. She'd made something of herself, worked her way up through the ranks of the local police department. We'd stayed friendly over the years, the kind of casual acquaintance that comes from growing up in a small town where everyone knows everyone. Business is good, Sheila. What can I do for you? Actually, I was calling about that break-in at the Carter residence last week. Ethan Carter? He mentioned you might know something about it. My blood went cold. Ethan Carter? I don't know any Ethan Carter. Huh, that's weird. He seemed to think you two had some kind of history. Said something about your wife doing photography work for him? I forced my voice to stay level. My wife works with a lot of clients. I don't keep track of all of them. Fair enough. Well, if you think of anything, give me a call. After I hung up, I sat in my desk chair and stared at the phone. So Ethan Carter had been robbed. Interesting timing considering what I'd overheard last night. Either the guy had enemies I didn't know about, or someone else was onto his little affair with my wife. The bell above my garage door chimed, and I looked up to see Willie Braddock walking in. Even at 58, Willie looked like he could go 10 rounds with guys half his age. His gray hair was cropped close to his skull, and his weathered hands showed the scars of a lifetime spent in boxing rings and training gyms. You look like hell, Oliver. Thanks for the pep talk, Coach. Willie pulled up a folding chair and sat down across from my desk. Want to talk about what's eating you? I considered telling him everything. Willie had been more than a boxing coach to me over the years. He'd been a mentor, sometimes the closest thing I had to a father figure. But the wounds were too fresh, the humiliation too raw. Just having some trouble at home. Claire? I nodded. Willie was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with those sharp blue eyes that had seen everything life could throw at a person. You know, when my first wife started stepping out on me, I thought the world was ending. Thought I'd never trust another woman again. What did you do? Well, first I got drunk and stupid. Then I got smart and patient. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. The thing about betrayal, Oliver, is that it reveals who people really are. Your wife thinks she's being clever, but she's actually showing you her true character. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Claire's name. Hey, honey, I said, putting the call on speaker so Willie could hear. Hi, Oliver. I just wanted to let you know I'll be working late tonight. Another client meeting. Anyone I know? There was a pause. Just a corporate client, nothing exciting. I probably won't be home until after midnight. Okay, drive safe. I will. Love you. Love you too. I hung up and looked at Willie. The Riverside Motel, tonight. Willie nodded slowly. You want some company? No, this is something I need to handle myself. But even as I said it, I knew I wasn't going to confront Claire and Ethan directly. That would be too easy, too predictable. If my wife wanted to play games, I'd show her how creative a simple mechanic could be. I spent the rest of the day working on cars and planning. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do. The Riverside Motel sat on a strip of cracked asphalt between a defunct gas station and a 24-hour laundromat. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting pink and blue shadows across the parking lot. I'd parked my pickup truck behind the laundromat, where I had a clear view of the motel, but was hidden from anyone pulling into the lot. At 8:15, a silver BMW pulled up to room 237. Even from a distance, I could see Ethan Carter climbing out of the driver's seat. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, lean, expensive haircut, clothes that probably cost more than I made in a month. He looked around nervously before knocking on the door. Claire opened it immediately. She was wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, something that hugged her curves and made her look 10 years younger. They embraced in the doorway, and I had to grip the steering wheel to keep from doing something stupid. They disappeared into the room, and I waited. Patience, Willie had said. Get smart and patient. At 9:30, I made my move. Ethan's BMW was parked under a broken streetlight, which made things easier. I'd brought a small toolkit from the garage, nothing too obvious. I started with the valve stems on his tires, letting the air out slowly so they'd be flat by morning but not obviously sabotaged. Then I popped the hood and disconnected his battery cables. Nothing permanent, nothing that couldn't be fixed, but enough to ruin his evening. As I was closing the hood, I heard voices coming from room 237. Through the thin walls, I could make out Claire's laughter and Ethan's deeper voice. They were talking about me. So predictable, Claire was saying. He'll be in that garage until at least 10 tonight, probably later. Sometimes I think he cares more about those cars than he does about our marriage. Maybe that's for the best, Ethan replied. Makes this easier. I feel guilty sometimes, Claire said, but her tone suggested otherwise. 22 years is a long time to throw away. You're not throwing anything away. You're finally living your life. I pulled out my phone and started recording again, holding it close to the window. The audio quality wasn't great, but it was clear enough. The thing is, Claire continued, Oliver's a good man, but he's so limited. He doesn't understand art, doesn't appreciate beauty. When I show him my photographs, he just nods and says, "They're nice. You actually see what I'm trying to create." That's because I understand you, Ethan said. We're the same kind of people, Claire. We appreciate the finer things in life. I stopped recording and stepped back from the window. I'd heard enough. As I walked back to my truck, I noticed another car parked in the shadows at the far end of the lot. A dark sedan with tinted windows. Someone else was watching the motel tonight. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through town. Our house looked different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The flower beds Claire had planted last spring, the porch swing we'd bought for lazy Sunday afternoons, the mailbox with both our names painted in cheerful yellow letters. All of it felt like a lie now. Inside, I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat at the kitchen table where Claire had been talking to Ethan just 24 hours ago. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're not the only one who knows about the affair. We should talk." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who has as much to lose as you do. Meet me at Hannigan's bar tomorrow night at 9. Come alone." I finished my bourbon and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. I kept thinking about that dark sedan in the motel parking lot, about the mysterious text message, about the sound of Claire's laughter echoing through those cheap motel walls. Tomorrow night, I'd find out who else was playing this game. And maybe I'd start to understand the rules. Hannigan's Bar occupied the corner of Main Street and 3rd Avenue, a dimly lit establishment that had been serving the working-class residents of our town for over 30 years. The interior was all dark wood and worn leather, with a jukebox in the corner that still played actual vinyl records. It was the kind of place where people minded their own business, which made it perfect for clandestine meetings. I arrived at 8:45 and ordered a beer from Tommy Hannigan, the owner's son who'd taken over the bar when his father retired. The place was moderately busy for a Thursday night, filled with the usual crowd of factory workers, truck drivers, and other folks who worked with their hands for a living. At exactly 9 o'clock, a woman walked through the front door and scanned the room. She was attractive in a sharp, professional way, with shoulder-length dark hair and clothes that suggested money and good taste. When her eyes found mine, she nodded slightly and walked over. "Oliver James? That's me. I'm Mara Carter, Ethan's wife." She slid into the booth across from me, and I got my first good look at the woman whose husband was sleeping with my wife. Up close, I could see the strain around her eyes, the careful way she held herself, like someone who'd been hurt but was determined not to show it. "You're the one who was watching the motel," I said. "Among other places." She signaled Tommy for a drink. "Vodka tonic, top shelf." We sat in silence until her drink arrived. Then Mara leaned forward, her voice low enough that no one else could hear. "How long have you known?" 2 days. You?" 3 weeks. She took a sip of her drink. "I hired a private investigator when Ethan started working late every night and coming home smelling like perfume. Your wife's perfume, as it turns out. What do you want from me? The same thing you want, I imagine, to make them pay for what they've done. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or instability. What I saw was cold, calculating anger that matched what I'd been feeling since I overheard Claire's phone call. What did you have in mind? Mara reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Ethan thinks he's being clever, but he's actually quite predictable. Every Tuesday and Thursday night for the past month, the Riverside Motel. Same room, same time. He pays cash, probably thinks that makes it untraceable. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, showing Ethan and Claire entering and leaving the motel room. The pictures were professionally shot, high quality, the kind that would hold up in court. You've been busy, I said. I believe in being thorough, but photographs are just the beginning. What else do you know? Mara's smile was sharp as a knife blade. Your wife has been siphoning money from your joint accounts. Small amounts, nothing you'd notice immediately, but it adds up. She's been depositing the money into a separate account that Ethan helped her set up. The bourbon I'd had with dinner turned to acid in my stomach. How much? $12,000 over the past 6 months. I closed my eyes and tried to process this new betrayal. $12,000 was a significant chunk of our savings, money we'd been putting aside for retirement, for the European vacation Claire had always talked about taking. There's more, Mara continued. Ethan's been telling people at his office about your wife, showing off pictures, bragging about his conquest. He thinks it makes him look like a big shot, sleeping with a married woman. Son of a bitch. Indeed, Mara finished her drink and signaled for another. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I looked around the bar at the familiar faces of people I'd known most of my life. These were honest, hard-working folks who believed in marriage and family and keeping your word. What would they think if they knew what Claire had been doing? What would they think of me for letting it happen? I'm not looking to destroy my wife, I said carefully. No? Then you're a better person than I am. Mara's voice carried a bitter edge. Because I want to destroy my husband completely. I want him to lose everything that matters to him. Why? Because this isn't his first affair. It's just the first one I've caught him at. She leaned back in the booth, her composure cracking slightly. 15 years of marriage, and I've been the faithful, supportive wife while he's been screwing around with anyone who'll have him. Your wife is just the latest in a long line. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Use that anger to get what you deserve. I thought about Willie's advice, about getting smart and patient. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership. You know your wife's habits, her weaknesses. I know my husband's. Together we can make sure they both get exactly what they deserve. Which is? Public humiliation, financial ruin, the complete destruction of their reputations. Mara's eyes glittered with malice. I want everyone in this town to know what kind of people they really are. I picked up the envelope of photographs and flipped through them again. In one picture, Claire was laughing at something Ethan had said, her head thrown back in genuine joy. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her laugh like that with me. What's the first step? Mara smiled, and for the first time since she'd sat down, it looked genuine. We make them think they're getting away with it. Let them get comfortable, careless. And then we start taking everything away from them, piece by piece. How? Leave that to me. But I'll need your help with the details. Your wife's schedule, her friends, her professional contacts. Can you get me that information? I nodded. What about your husband? Ethan's easy. He's arrogant and stupid. Thinks he's untouchable because he makes good money and wears expensive suits. Men like him always underestimate their wives. We spent the next hour planning, sharing information, building a strategy that would bring both our cheating spouses to their knees. By the time we parted ways, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation or forgiveness, but hope for justice. As I drove home, I thought about the conversation I'd overheard in the garage, about Claire's casual dismissal of our marriage, her cold calculation in betraying everything we'd built together. She thought I was predictable, limited, someone who would never figure out what she was doing. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Claire's car wasn't there, which meant she was probably at another client meeting with Ethan. I went inside and poured myself another bourbon, then sat at my computer and started researching. By 3 in the morning, I had a comprehensive file on Ethan Carter, his business address, his social media profiles, his professional associations, even his gym membership and country club affiliation. If Mara and I were going to war, I wanted to know everything about the enemy. Claire came home at 3:30, slipping into bed beside me and whispering that she was sorry for being so late. I pretended to be asleep, listening to her breathing slow as she drifted off. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. The beauty of a small town is that everyone knows everyone else's business, which makes it easy to spread information when you want to. The curse of a small town is that everyone knows everyone else's business, which makes it impossible to keep secrets when you need to. Over the next week, I started laying the groundwork for what Mara and I had planned. It began with casual conversations at the garage, innocent questions about photography and advertising, mentions of Claire's new client who seemed to be taking up so much of her time. "She's been working late a lot lately," I told Mrs. Patterson when she came to pick up her Honda. "This new client has her running all over town taking pictures." "That's wonderful, dear. Claire's so talented. What kind of business is it?" "Some advertising company downtown. Guy named Carter, I think." Mrs. Patterson nodded and filed the information away, the same way she'd been collecting and distributing gossip for the past 40 years. By the end of the day, half the neighborhood would know that Claire James was working closely with some businessman from downtown. Meanwhile, Mara was doing her own reconnaissance. She'd started following Claire to her various appointments, documenting not just the affair, but also the lies Claire was telling to cover it up. The fake client meetings, the fictional photography sessions, the elaborate deceptions she'd constructed to hide her betrayal. "She's getting sloppy," Mara told me during our second meeting at Hannigan's. "Yesterday, she told you she was shooting a wedding in the next town over, but she was actually at Ethan's apartment all afternoon." "How do you know?" "Because I was parked across the street, taking pictures." Mara showed me her phone, scrolling through images of Claire entering and leaving Ethan's building. "She's so confident that you'll never check up on her story." "What about your husband?" "Ethan's even worse. He's been telling his coworkers that he's mentoring a local photographer, helping her build her business. He thinks it makes him sound generous and professional." I shook my head. "They really think we're that stupid. They think we're that trusting. There's a difference." Mara was right. Claire and Ethan weren't necessarily smarter than us. They were just more willing to lie, cheat, and betray the people who loved them. But that willingness was also their weakness, because it made them careless. "I think it's time to escalate," I said. "What did you have in mind?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the recording I'd made at the motel. "I've been thinking about their friends, their professional networks. What would happen if people started asking questions about their relationship?" Mara's eyes lit up. "Social pressure. Exactly. We don't have to prove they're having an affair, we just have to make people wonder." "How?" "Leave that to me." The next day, I put the first phase of our plan into action. I started with Claire's photography group, a collection of local artists and hobbyists who met every other week to share their work and network. Claire had been a member for 3 years, and she often talked about how important the group was for her professional development. I called Janet Morrison, the group's organizer, and asked if I could surprise Claire by commissioning a special photography project. "That's so sweet of you, Oliver. What did you have in mind?" "Well, Claire's been working with this advertising executive lately, helping him with some corporate photography. I thought maybe the group could do a feature on successful collaborations between local artists and businesses." "What a wonderful idea. What's the executive's name?" "Ethan Carter. He runs some kind of marketing firm downtown." "I'll reach out to him directly." This could be a great opportunity for all our members to see how professional partnerships work. I hung up the phone and smiled. Janet Morrison was well-meaning but notoriously indiscreet. By the end of the week, every member of Claire's photography group would know about her professional partnership with Ethan Carter. And when they started asking questions about the nature of that partnership, Claire would have to come up with answers. The second phase involved Ethan's professional network. Mara had given me the names of his coworkers and business associates, and I started making anonymous calls to his office, asking about the photography services his company provided. I heard that Ethan Carter works with local photographers, I told his secretary. I'm looking for someone to shoot my company's annual report. Oh, Mr. Carter doesn't handle photography directly, but I know he's been working closely with a local photographer lately. Let me get you her information. That's not necessary. I was specifically interested in working with someone Mr. Carter recommends personally. I heard he has a very close working relationship with this photographer. There was a pause. Well, I suppose I could ask him about it. Please do, and tell him I'm particularly interested in the kind of personal attention he's been giving his photography clients. I made similar calls to other businesses in Ethan's building, to his country club, to the gym where he worked out. Each conversation was carefully crafted to plant seeds of doubt, to make people wonder about the nature of his relationship with his photographer. By Friday, both Claire and Ethan were starting to feel the pressure. The strangest thing happened today, Claire said over dinner. Janet Morrison called and wanted to interview me about my work with Ethan. She seemed to think we were some kind of business partnership. That's nice, I said, not looking up from my plate. Good publicity for your photography business. But it was weird how she phrased it. She kept asking about our collaboration and how closely we work together. Maybe she's just being thorough. Claire frowned. And then Sarah from the photography group called and asked if Ethan and I were planning to do a presentation together about professional relationships in the arts. Sounds like you're becoming famous. It doesn't feel like fame. It feels like gossip. I finally looked up and met her eyes. Is there something to gossip about? Of course not. Ethan's just a client. Then you don't have anything to worry about. But Claire did look worried, and that was exactly what I wanted. Meanwhile, Mara was reporting similar conversations with Ethan. His coworkers were asking questions, his secretary was making comments, even his golf buddies were wondering about his photographer friend. He's starting to panic, Mara told me during our third meeting at Hannigan's. Last night, he suggested that maybe he and Claire should be more discreet about their meetings. Good. Let them sweat a little. What's the next step? I smiled and pulled out a manila envelope of my own. Now, we give them something real to worry about. The photographs I'd taken outside the Riverside Motel weren't as professional as Mara's, but they were clear enough to serve their purpose. I'd printed them on high-quality paper and arranged them in a neat stack, each one showing Claire and Ethan in compromising positions, embracing in the doorway, kissing by his car, holding hands as they walked to the room. But I wasn't going to confront them directly. That would be too easy, too predictable. Instead, I was going to let their friends do it for me. I started with Dave Morrison, Janet's husband, and one of my oldest friends. Dave and I had played high school football together, served as each other's best man, spent countless evenings drinking beer and complaining about our wives. He was also one of the biggest gossips in town, though he'd never admit it. Dave, I need to show you something, I said when he stopped by the garage on Saturday morning. But I need you to promise me you'll keep it between us. Sure, Oliver, what's going on? I handed him the envelope. I found these in Claire's camera bag. Dave opened the envelope and his face went white. Jesus, Oliver, I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. I mean, I suspected something was going on, but seeing it like this? Have you talked to her about it? How can I? If I confront her, she'll just deny it or make excuses. But I can't pretend I don't know. Dave looked through the pictures again, shaking his head. This Carter guy, he's married too, right? As far as I know. His wife should know about this. Maybe, but I don't want to be the one to tell her. This is humiliating enough already. Dave put his hand on my shoulder. Oliver, you're my friend. I hate seeing you go through this. But you can't just ignore it. I know. I just need time to figure out what to do. Whatever you decide, you know Linda and I are here for you. After Dave left, I made similar visits to 3 other friends, Tom Bradley, who worked at the bank where Claire and I had our accounts, Mike Sullivan, whose wife was in Claire's photography group, and Jerry Patterson, Mrs. Patterson's son and one of the town's volunteer firefighters. Each conversation followed the same pattern. I showed them the pictures, swore them to secrecy, and asked for their advice. And each time, I knew that despite their promises to keep quiet, the information would spread through town like wildfire. By Sunday evening, my phone was ringing off the hook. "Oliver, it's Linda Morrison. Dave told me what's happening, and I just want you to know that we're here for you." "Oliver, this is Mike Sullivan. Listen, buddy, if you need someone to talk to." "Oliver, Jerry Patterson here. I heard about your situation, and I wanted you to know that if you need anything." Each caller offered support, sympathy, and advice. But more importantly, each conversation confirmed that word was spreading exactly as I'd planned. Monday morning, Claire came downstairs looking haggard and nervous. "Oliver, the strangest thing happened yesterday. Linda Morrison called and asked if everything was okay between us. She seemed to think we were having problems." "What did you tell her?" "That everything was fine, of course. But then Sarah Sullivan called with the same question. And then Mary Patterson." I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the kitchen counter. "That is strange. It's like someone's been telling people we're having marriage problems." "Are we?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Claire stared at me, and for a moment, I thought she might confess everything. Instead, she looked away. "I don't know what's gotten into people lately. Everyone seems to be gossiping about everyone else." "Small town," I said with a shrug. "You know how it is." But Claire knew it wasn't that simple. Over the next few days, the social pressure intensified. Friends stopped calling her for coffee dates. Members of her photography group started treating her differently. Even the cashiers at the grocery store seemed to be whispering about her. Meanwhile, Ethan was experiencing his own problems. Mara had orchestrated a similar campaign among his professional contacts, and the rumors about his inappropriate relationship with a married photographer were starting to affect his business. "He's furious," Mara told me during our fourth meeting at Hannigan's. "He thinks someone at his office is spreading rumors about him." "What's Claire saying?" "According to Ethan, she's convinced that you're behind it somehow, but she can't figure out how you found out about the affair." "Good. Let them blame each other." "There's something else," Mara said. "Ethan's boss called him into a meeting yesterday. Apparently someone complained about his unprofessional conduct with clients." "Someone?" "Me." I called his office anonymously and said I was concerned about the nature of his relationship with a married photographer. I raised my beer in a toast. To anonymous complaints. To anonymous complaints. But our celebration was premature. The next evening, I got a call from Dave Morrison that changed everything. "Oliver, you need to know something. Claire called Janet today and asked if she knew who was spreading rumors about her." "What did Janet tell her?" "That's the problem. Janet mentioned that you'd called her about featuring Claire's work with Ethan Carter. Claire put two and two together." My stomach dropped. Shit. "She's on her way home now. She sounded pretty angry." I hung up the phone and looked around the kitchen, trying to prepare myself for what was coming. 22 years of marriage was about to end, and despite everything Claire had done, I felt a stab of sadness for what we'd once had. Claire's car pulled into the driveway at 8:15. She came through the front door like a hurricane, her face flushed with anger and her eyes blazing. "You son of a bitch," she said without preamble. "You've been spying on me." "Have I?" "Don't play dumb with me, Oliver. I know you're behind all the rumors, all the gossip. You've been turning our friends against me." I set down my beer and looked at her calmly. "Our friends? Are you sure they're your friends, Claire?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that friends don't usually turn on you unless they have a good reason." Claire's composure cracked slightly. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know about Ethan Carter." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, her hand reaching for the kitchen counter to steady herself. "I know about the Riverside Motel," I continued. "I know about the money you've been stealing from our accounts. I know about the lies you've been telling everyone, including me." Claire's face went through a series of emotions: shock, fear, anger, and finally defiance. "So what? she said. So what if I've been seeing Ethan? You think I owe you some kind of explanation? 22 years of marriage. Yeah, I think you owe me something. 22 years of what? Living in this house, watching you work on cars, listening to you talk about engines and transmissions? Do you have any idea how boring my life has been? Boring enough to steal from me? I didn't steal anything. That money was as much mine as yours. Not the way you took it. Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to know the truth, Oliver? The truth is that I've been dead inside for years. Ethan makes me feel alive again. He sees me as more than just some mechanic's wife. And what does that make me? It makes you exactly what you've always been. A small-town mechanic who never wanted anything more than what he already had. The words were designed to hurt, and they did, but they also confirmed everything I'd suspected about Claire's true feelings, about the contempt she'd been hiding behind her facade of marital contentment. You're right, I said quietly. I am just a small-town mechanic, but at least I'm not a liar and a cheat. Go to hell, Oliver. I think I'm already there. Claire stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much damage I could do to her relationship with Ethan, to her reputation in town. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you to leave. This is my house too. Then I'll leave. But either way, this marriage is over. Claire's defiance crumbled, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married all those years ago. Young, vulnerable, uncertain about the future. Oliver, maybe we can work this out. Maybe we can go to counseling, or it's too late for that. Please, I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean we have to throw away everything we've built together. You threw it away the first time you went to that motel. Claire started crying then, real tears that might have moved me a week ago. But I'd heard her laughing with Ethan, heard her casual dismissal of our marriage, seen the evidence of her betrayal with my own eyes. I'll pack a bag tonight, she said through her tears. I'll stay with my sister until we figure out what happens next. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. After Claire left, I sat in the empty house and tried to process what had just happened. 22 years of marriage ended with a 10-minute conversation in our kitchen. It should have felt more dramatic, more final. Instead, it just felt like the end of a very long, very exhausting day. I was reaching for my phone to call Mara when it rang in my hand. Oliver? It's Dave Morrison. I just saw Claire driving past our house with a suitcase in her car. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Dave. Claire and I are getting a divorce. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, buddy. I know this has to be hard. Actually, it's not as hard as I thought it would be. What can Linda and I do to help? I thought about the question, about all the friends who'd called to offer support, about the community that had rallied around me without even knowing the full story. Just be my friends, I said. That's all I've ever needed. After I hung up, I poured myself another bourbon and started planning the next phase of my revenge. Because despite what I'd told Claire, this wasn't over, not by a long shot. 3 weeks after Claire moved out, I was starting to enjoy the quiet. The house felt bigger somehow, less cluttered with the detritus of a failing marriage. I'd rearranged the furniture, bought groceries I actually wanted to eat, and started sleeping through the night for the first time in months. But the peace was temporary. Mara and I still had unfinished business. Ethan's getting desperate, she told me during our latest meeting at Hannigan's. He's been calling me non-stop, trying to convince me that his relationship with Claire is purely professional. What are you telling him? That I believe him, of course. I'm playing the role of the trusting, naive wife. Mara's smile was sharp as a razor. Meanwhile, I've been documenting everything. Bank records, credit card statements, hotel receipts. When I file for divorce, I'll have enough evidence to take him for everything he's worth. What about Claire? What about her? She's still part of this. She helped destroy my marriage, stole my money, lied to everyone we know. She doesn't get to walk away clean. Mara studied my face. What did you have in mind? I pulled out a folder I've been preparing for the past week. Claire's photography business depends on her reputation in the community. She markets herself as a trustworthy professional who captures life's most important moments: weddings, family portraits, corporate events. And what happens to that reputation when people find out she's been lying and cheating? She loses clients. She loses everything. I opened the folder and showed Mara what I'd been working on. It was a comprehensive list of Claire's clients over the past 2 years, along with contact information and details about the services she'd provided. You're going to contact her clients? Not directly. That would be too obvious, too vindictive. But information has a way of spreading in a small town, especially when it's true. Mara nodded slowly. What about Ethan? Leave Ethan to me. The next phase of our plan required patience and precision. I started by having casual conversations with people who'd hired Claire for photography services, not to badmouth her directly, but to plant seeds of doubt about her reliability and professionalism. I heard Claire's been having some personal problems lately, I mentioned to Bob Thompson, whose daughter's wedding Claire had photographed 6 months earlier. I hope it didn't affect the quality of her work. What kind of personal problems? Oh, marriage troubles, financial issues, the usual stuff that happens when people make bad choices. Bob frowned. She seemed professional when she shot Jennifer's wedding. I'm sure she was. Claire's always been good at putting on a front when she needs to. Similar conversations with other clients had the desired effect. People started asking questions about Claire's personal life, her professional ethics, her trustworthiness. And when they learned about the affair, about the lies and the theft, they started questioning whether they wanted to do business with someone who could betray the people closest to her. Meanwhile, I was working on a more direct approach with Ethan. I'd been studying his habits for weeks, learning his routines, his weaknesses, his pressure points. Ethan was a creature of habit who liked to project an image of success and sophistication. He drove an expensive car, wore designer clothes, ate at trendy restaurants, and belonged to an exclusive country club. All of that required money, and according to Mara, Ethan was already stretched thin financially. The affair with Claire was costing him money he didn't have: hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts, and the lifestyle he thought he needed to maintain to keep her interested. I decided to make his financial situation worse. It started with anonymous complaints to his professional licensing board. Ethan's advertising firm was required to maintain certain ethical standards, and relationships with clients that went beyond professional boundaries were grounds for investigation. I'm concerned about the conduct of one of your licensed professionals, I told the woman who answered the phone at the state licensing office. I have reason to believe he's been engaging in inappropriate relationships with clients. What kind of inappropriate relationships? Sexual relationships with married clients. Do you have documentation of these relationships? I have photographs. Please send them to our investigations department along with a written complaint. I mailed the photos the next day, along with a detailed letter outlining Ethan's affair with Claire and the professional misconduct it represented. I knew the investigation would take months, but the complaint would be on his record immediately, and potential clients who did background checks would see it. Next, I targeted his country club membership. The Riverside Country Club prided itself on maintaining high standards of personal conduct among its members. Adultery might not be illegal, but it was definitely frowned upon in their social circle. I called the club's membership director and asked to speak with someone about a potential new member. I'm interested in joining, I lied. But I wanted to ask about the club's standards regarding personal conduct. I've heard that some members have been involved in extramarital affairs, and that makes me uncomfortable. The club doesn't involve itself in members' private lives unless their conduct reflects poorly on the organization. What if a member was having a very public affair with a married woman? The kind of thing that everyone in town is talking about. There was a pause. Could you be more specific? Ethan Carter. I'm sure you know the situation I'm referring to. I'll make sure the membership committee is aware of your concerns. I hung up, knowing that Ethan's country club membership was now in jeopardy. The club's board was made up of conservative businessmen who valued discretion and respectability above all else. A member who was the subject of public gossip about an affair would be quietly encouraged to resign. But I wasn't finished with Ethan yet. The final piece of my plan involved his business relationships. Ethan's advertising firm depended on corporate clients who trusted him to represent their brands professionally. Any hint of scandal or impropriety could cost him major accounts. I started making calls to his biggest clients, posing as a concerned citizen who wanted to make sure they were aware of their advertising representative's personal conduct. "I'm calling because I'm concerned about the person your company has chosen to handle your advertising," I told the marketing director of a major local bank. "Ethan Carter has been having a very public affair with a married woman, and I thought you should know before it reflects poorly on your bank's reputation." "We'll look into it. I have photographs if you need documentation." "That won't be necessary." But I sent the photos anyway, along with copies of the motel receipts Mara had obtained and a timeline of the affair. I made similar calls to 6 other companies, each time expressing concern about their association with someone whose personal conduct was becoming a public scandal. Within 2 weeks, the pressure was showing. Ethan's business was hemorrhaging clients. His country club membership was under review, and his professional license was being investigated. The financial strain was enormous, and according to Mara, he was starting to crack under the pressure. "He's been drinking heavily," she told me, "staying out late, coming home angry and paranoid. He thinks someone's conducting a campaign against him, but he can't figure out who." "What about Claire?" "That's the interesting part. Ethan's starting to blame her for his problems. He thinks the affair has made him too visible, too vulnerable to attack." "Good. Let them turn on each other." But Claire wasn't going down without a fight. 3 days later, she showed up at my garage unannounced, looking haggard and desperate. "We need to talk," she said. "I don't think we have anything to talk about." "Please, Oliver, just 5 minutes." I looked at her standing in the doorway of my garage, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. Then I remembered the sound of her laughter at the motel, her casual dismissal of our marriage, the money she'd stolen from our accounts. "5 minutes," I said. Claire stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "I know you're behind what's happening to Ethan." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me. His business is falling apart. His reputation is ruined. And it all started after you found out about us." "Maybe his business is falling apart because he's been spending more time in motel rooms than in his office." "You're destroying an innocent man." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Innocent? Claire, he's been screwing another man's wife for months. He helped you steal money from our joint accounts. He bragged about the affair to his coworkers. Exactly which part of that makes him innocent?" "He loves me. He loves the idea of you, the excitement, the secrecy, the ego boost of stealing another man's wife. But when the novelty wears off and the real consequences start piling up, how long do you think that love will last?" Claire's composure cracked. "You're just jealous because he can give me things you never could." "Like what? A reputation as a homewrecker? A business built on lies? A relationship that started with betrayal? He understands me in ways you never did." "Then why are you here begging me to stop ruining his life? If your relationship is so strong, you should be able to weather a little adversity together." Claire stared at me, and I could see her struggling with the truth she didn't want to acknowledge. That Ethan was already pulling away from her, already looking for an exit from a relationship that had become more liability than asset. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to disappear. Leave town, start over somewhere else, and never contact me again." "I can't do that. My whole life is here." "Your life here is over, Claire. Your reputation is destroyed, your business is failing, and your boyfriend is about to dump you for someone with less baggage. You can leave voluntarily, with some dignity intact, or you can stay and watch everything fall apart around you." "And if I leave? Then maybe I'll stop making phone calls." Claire understood the threat. She nodded slowly and headed for the door. "Oliver," she said without turning around, "for what it's worth, I really did love you once." "I know," I said. "That's what makes this so much worse." After she left, I called Mara and told her about the conversation. Do you think she'll actually leave town? Probably not. Claire's too stubborn and too proud to run away. Then we finish this. How? Leave that to me, but be ready to move fast when I call you. I didn't hear from Mara for 3 days. Then, on Friday evening, my phone rang. It's time, she said. Meet me at the Riverside Country Club in 1 hour. And bring your camera. The Riverside Country Club sat on a hill overlooking the town, its manicured grounds and colonial architecture a testament to old money and older traditions. I'd never been inside the club, never had reason to visit the world of corporate executives and inherited wealth that Ethan Carter had tried so hard to join. But tonight, I was going to get a very close look. Mara met me in the parking lot, dressed in an elegant black dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. She looked every inch the successful businessman's wife, which was exactly the image she needed to project for what we were about to do. Ethan's inside, she said. Annual membership dinner. He's been drinking heavily, trying to network his way out of the hole he's dug himself into. What's the plan? Ethan thinks he's attending a dinner to save his membership. What he doesn't know is that I've arranged for a very special presentation. Mara handed me a small device that looked like a remote control. When I give you the signal, press this button. It will activate the projector in the main dining room. Projector? I've prepared a slideshow for the membership committee. Photos, documents, financial records, everything they need to understand exactly what kind of man Ethan Carter really is. I looked at the device in my hand. This will destroy him completely. That's the idea. What about Claire? She's inside too. Ethan brought her as his date, thinking it would help his image to be seen with a respectable photographer. I almost laughed at the irony. Ethan was so desperate to save his reputation that he'd brought the woman who'd helped destroy it in the first place. How do we get inside? We don't. You're going to wait here and monitor the parking lot. When the presentation starts, people are going to leave. Some of them will be very angry, and I want you to document their reactions. And you? I'm going inside to watch my husband's world fall apart. Mara walked toward the club's entrance with the confidence of someone who belonged there. I positioned myself behind a row of cars where I could see both the entrance and the main dining room windows. 20 minutes later, Mara appeared at one of the windows and nodded in my direction. I pressed the button on the remote control and watched as the lights in the dining room dimmed and a projection screen descended from the ceiling. Even from the parking lot, I could see the images that appeared on the screen. Photos of Ethan and Claire at the motel, bank records showing the money transfers, copies of the professional complaints that had been filed against him. The presentation was methodical, devastating, and completely irrefutable. The reaction inside the dining room was immediate. I could see people standing up, pointing at the screen, gesturing angrily in Ethan's direction. Through the windows, I watched Ethan rise from his seat and try to address the room, but he was shouted down by angry voices. Then the exodus began. The club's front door burst open, and people started streaming out, their faces flushed with anger and embarrassment. I recognized several prominent businessmen, city council members, and other pillars of the community. They were talking in heated whispers, shaking their heads, and shooting disgusted looks back at the building. I started taking pictures, documenting the faces of people who would never associate with Ethan Carter again, capturing the moment when his social and professional network collapsed completely. 5 minutes later, Ethan himself appeared in the doorway, his face pale and his expensive suit disheveled. Claire was beside him, looking stunned and humiliated. They stood there for a moment, as if unsure where to go or what to do next. Then Ethan saw his BMW, and his face contorted with rage. Someone had spray-painted "Cheater" across the windshield in bright red letters. The tires had been slashed, and photos of him and Claire were scattered across the hood like confetti. "You bitch!" he screamed, spinning around to face Claire. "This is all your fault." "My fault?" Claire's voice was shrill with panic. "You're the one who brought me here. I brought you here to help save my reputation, not destroy it. I didn't know about any of this. Like hell you didn't. You and your psycho husband planned this whole thing." They were shouting at each other in the parking lot of the most exclusive club in town, their voices echoing off the surrounding hills. Other members were stopping to watch the spectacle, some of them taking pictures with their phones. I kept shooting, documenting every moment of their public meltdown. "Ethan, please," Claire was saying. "We can figure this out. We can leave town together, start over somewhere else." "Are you insane? I'm not going anywhere with you." "You're toxic, Claire. Everything you touch turns to shit." "But you said you loved me." "I said a lot of things. That doesn't mean I meant them." The words hit Claire like physical blows. She stumbled backward, her face crumpling with the realization that the man she'd destroyed her marriage for was abandoning her at the first sign of real trouble. "You bastard," she whispered. "You made me believe." "I didn't make you believe anything. You wanted to believe it because it made you feel special, made you feel like you were more than just some small-town mechanic's wife." "I am more than that." "No, Claire, you're exactly what you've always been. A bored housewife who thought she deserved better than what she had. And now you've got nothing." Ethan turned and walked away, leaving Claire standing alone in the parking lot. She looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would help her, but the other club members were already getting into their cars and driving away. I watched her pull out her phone and make a call, probably trying to reach a friend or family member who could pick her up. But after several attempts, she gave up and started walking toward the road. That's when Mara appeared beside me. "How did it go?" I asked. "Better than I expected. The membership committee voted unanimously to revoke Ethan's membership. 3 of his remaining clients were in that room, and they've already called to terminate their contracts." "What about the slideshow?" "I may have mentioned that copies of all the evidence would be made available to anyone who wanted them. For legal purposes, of course." I looked at Mara with new respect. She'd orchestrated the complete destruction of her husband's reputation with surgical precision, and she'd done it in front of the people whose opinions mattered most to him. What happens now? Now Ethan discovers that I've already filed for divorce and frozen all our joint accounts. His lawyer will inform him that I'm seeking full custody of our children and half of everything he owns, which isn't much after tonight. And Claire? Claire is going to find out that her reputation in this town is beyond repair. No one will hire her for photography work, no one will trust her with their special occasions, and no one will want to be associated with her. We watched Claire disappear into the darkness, walking along the side of the road in her high heels and expensive dress. "Do you feel sorry for her?" Mara asked. I considered the question. "I feel sorry for the woman I married 22 years ago, but that woman disappeared a long time ago. The person walking down that road is someone I don't know. She made her choices." Yes, she did. Mara and I drove back to town in separate cars, but we met one final time at Hannigan's Bar to celebrate the completion of our mission. "To justice," Mara said, raising her glass. "To justice." We drank in silence for a while, watching the late-night crowd of factory workers and truck drivers who represented the honest, hard-working heart of our community. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Take my children and move somewhere new. Start over." Mara smiled. "What about you?" "I think I'll stay here. This is my home. These are my people. I'm not going to let what Claire did drive me away from the life I've built." "Even though everyone will know what happened?" "Everyone already knows what happened. But they also know that I didn't deserve it. And they know that I handled it with more class than either Claire or Ethan showed." Mara nodded. "You're a good man, Oliver James. Your wife was a fool to throw you away." "Her loss." We finished our drinks and prepared to leave. As we stood up, Mara handed me one final envelope. "What's this?" "The $12,000 Claire stole from your accounts. I recovered it from Ethan's personal safe, along with some other interesting items." I opened the envelope and saw a cashier's check made out to me for the full amount plus interest. "How did you—" Let's just say that Ethan was very cooperative, once he realized his alternatives. I looked at the check, then at Mara. "Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't have done this without your help." We shook hands in the parking lot, Two people who'd been betrayed by the ones they loved most, who'd found a way to get justice without compromising their own integrity. As I drove home to my empty house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but a deep, quiet peace that came from knowing I'd done the right thing in the right way. Claire and Ethan had destroyed their own lives through their choices, their lies, their betrayals. I'd simply made sure that the consequences of those choices caught up with them. The next morning, I opened my garage and went back to work. Mrs. Patterson brought in her Honda for another tune-up, and we talked about the weather, about her grandchildren, about the simple, honest things that made life worth living. Around noon, Dave Morrison stopped by. "Oliver, I heard about what happened at the country club last night." News travels fast in a small town. "Are you okay?" I thought about the question, about everything that had happened over the past month, about the marriage that had ended and the future that stretched ahead of me. "Yeah, Dave, I think I am." "Good. Linda and I were wondering if you'd like to come over for dinner Sunday. Just the three of us, nothing fancy." "I'd like that." After Dave left, I went back to work on the engine I'd been rebuilding. It was a 1967 Mustang, a classic that had seen better days, but still had good bones, still had the potential to be something beautiful again. Like me, I thought. Like my life. I was tightening the last bolt on the carburetor when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Claire's name, but I let it go to voicemail. Whatever she had to say, I wasn't interested in hearing it. Later that evening, I listened to the message. "Oliver, it's me. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I wanted you to know that I'm leaving town tomorrow. I'm going to stay with my sister in California until I figure out what to do next. I also wanted to say that I'm sorry. Not just for the affair, but for everything. For the lies, for the money, for throwing away what we had. You deserve better than what I gave you, and I hope someday you can forgive me." There was a long pause, and then, "I really did love you once, Oliver. I hope you can remember that." I deleted the message and poured myself a bourbon. Then I sat on my front porch and watched the sun set over the town where I'd spent my entire life, where I'd built a business and a reputation based on honest work and fair dealing. Tomorrow, Claire would be gone, and Ethan would be dealing with the wreckage of his ruined life. But I would still be here, still be the man I'd always been, Oliver James, small-town mechanic, loyal friend, and someone who understood that the most important things in life couldn't be bought or stolen or thrown away on a whim. I raised my glass to the setting sun and smiled. "She said protection made it safe," I said to the empty evening air. Turns out the real danger was always at home. Guess I finally found my knockout punch.